Welcome, one and all, to Ink and Iron, a show where the worlds of art and heavy music collide. My name is Ben, and I will be your creative crafter of color and canvas.
And my name is Ryan. I will be your malevolent master of metal music. And today we are reacting to and Ben is drawing the song Adrift Beneath the Listless Waves by the band Fires in the Distance.
You definitely picked an interesting song for a first reaction. From my knowledge of your music taste, I was not expecting an instrumental, but I very, very much enjoyed it. When I did my first listen through, this was just some of my first reactions. So talking about like the soft parts of the song versus the heavy. So like there was that piano melody amidst like the heavy guitar riffs. I really liked how they kind of played off of each other. And then some sort of themes that I thought about as I was listening to the song were like the idea of exploration and like a sense of wandering or like traveling through some sort of space and like the feeling of triumph from like the different movements as if the song was kind of telling a story because it's a little longer too, but there's definitely different segments that make it feel like it's one journey almost. That's kind of what I was feeling as I was listening to it. But looking at the title, I wanted to look a little bit more as well at the words. So the idea of something being listless, I wasn't sure what that actually meant. Turns out it means something that's lacking energy. And then adrift, I loosely know what that is, but just to be a little more sure, it was the idea of floating without being moored or like tethered to something. So, with all these ideas of exploration and vastness and floating and wandering through space, I thought of an astronaut that is floating through space and just taking in the sights of everything around him and realizing, how small we really are. That was just sort of my initial thoughts. And so I hope you'll see that as we watch the video here together of this first drawing. Let's go ahead and start in three, two, one. So yeah, again, I went with the spaceman, so you'll see that very quickly.
It's funny because I actually didn't think of a spaceman at all whenever I
Okay.
thought of this. The two that I thought of are actually complete opposites of each other and they have nothing to do with space. Um, Adrift made me think first of actually just drifting in the ocean. So the vastness, the one thing that I got from your storyboard that I thought was fantastic was wondering and wandering,
Hmm.
because both my ideas kind of fall right along that line with the idea of just floating in this like huge ocean. Like I thought of this person just kind of like laying in the water in this just deep dark ocean under them with the vastness of everything that like you mentioned with space, like how small we really are and what else is out there. The other idea was the exact opposite of being on land, being stuck in the forest with this whole just scene behind you, this whole forest, and even to bring the band's name into question, like fires in the distance. So there's like this smoke coming up out of it, but you can't tell where it's coming from because it's just this vast part of the world that this vast part
Hmm.
that we don't necessarily see everything.
Yeah. So I mean, not too different from each other. I feel like people often, once you hear that thing about the ocean and how we've only explored like a certain percent of the ocean or something like that. So very similar in like the idea of like these bodies of just immense scale that we can't really understand. So kind
The
of
fact
interesting
that
that
we
we both landed on that.
explored more of space than we have the ocean seems kind of crazy, but
Yeah.
here we are.
I don't know if you caught it during that first initial sketch of like the redlining. I was gonna put a spaceship with like a broken tether,
Mhm.
because again, it was like the idea of not being moored or tethered to something. But I didn't really like how it looked, so I just axed it. Didn't want to take focus away from this guy and whatever it is he's beholding, as you'll see. So here you can kind of see. So I finished the red line sketch, and I'm starting to color things in. I wanted to do because I really like the album cover, as well. I don't know if we saw the same one, but it's like that woman kind of, it's like a painted. picture of the woman on next to the water. I really liked how it was kind of like rough and gritty, like that's the texture you get with painting. So I wanted to do something similar. I use this brush a lot. It's just a pencil, but I really like how like kind of gritty and textured it is, and it kind of makes things look a little painted as well. So that was sort of the inspiration for like the style of the overall piece. I really
The
liked how they
more
did
like
that.
the more like black metal album covers, and even though this is truly just an instrumental, they fall into like the black metal genre. Um, they are very. I almost the word that I always land on is like primal, but not in a bad way. It's
Mhm.
very just like wandering, right? It's almost like a hunter gatherer. There's just a very primal aspect to a lot of those album covers, and this one I feel like is very similar. Obviously the modernization that you have for the drawing is much different, but it is a fantastic album cover, and that's one thing that I've always appreciated about that side of metal is the artwork that they always have on their covers and EPs, whatever it is.
Mhm. Yeah, I thought it was gorgeous. So and without like copying the style, I've this is something I've been kind of messing around with myself as well because I take inspiration from some of those album covers. I've seen them. There's a few from songs that you showed me before, especially that deal with like um we talked about like vastness and the like huge spaces, and they do a really good job at communicating scale, and that's something
Mhm.
that I find kind of hard to do, and I tried for it with this one. So you'll kind of see as I finish up with the Mr. Spaceman, when I start working on the visor of the helmet, you'll see that he's like looking at a huge sun basically. So the implication is that he's kind of just floating towards the sun and taking in this massive spectacle that we can't even, we can't comprehend what that's like. So that was, going back to the themes of the song. I took that. So not only is he floating in space, but he's witnessing this body that's just so beyond anything that any human could ever really take in. And so then the song, I said it kind of reminded me of like a story. So I really wanted this piece to be like, how did this guy get here? What's happening? Is he safe? What's, you know, there's a lot of things that you could take just from this one picture, kind of like that song.
Well, and the reason that I kind of gave you this one is, well, this is a relatively new song. It's a 2023 song. I'm not a huge instrumental fan. I don't
Mhm.
I like instrument like I like guitar drums, whatever. Like I listen to that in songs, but I don't typically just listen to instrumentals. But this one felt like something that I could listen to routinely. And I thought of this when we proposed this idea. You were like, hey, we'll react and we can react to the songs and everything like that. And I was like, let's try something completely different for number one that you can't pull a lyric from. You can't pull something that you're inspired by a lyric because this is truly just listening to the song, and you have to kind of react to it. I mean, yeah, you have the title, but the idea that there is nothing that you can play off of in the song except for the instrumentals. I thought it would be fun because I knew that you would be able to take it and very much make it what the song is about.
Yeah. No, I loved it. I thought it was brilliant. And I think just from our initial reactions, it's really interesting how we both kind of landed on similar concepts, even if we weren't in the exact same ballpark. Um,
We were literally on different planets. While you
yeah.
were floating through space, I was floating through the sea.
Yeah,
So same idea, different way of portraying it.
right. So here you can kind of see I'm finally getting around to that sun. So once I finished the spaceman, I was trying to do the visor, and that was a little tricky because it's like, how do you make something seem like 3D and glowy, but also painted while also communicating the scale and like keeping that face behind it so you can really see that this person, like their eyes are wide open and they're in awe beholding this body in front of them. And I took a good while. So outside of like right now, I'm just kind of adding highlights and shadows, but you'll see I go back to the sun. I'm like, I don't, is that exactly how I like it? um, and I do all that before I start filling in the space behind it to then. So not only is it the scale of this guy looking at the sun, but it's like, do you really get the feeling that he is just adrift in this huge, huge body of space? You'll see I start making some like little planets and stars. Um, but we're pretty well on the way now to finished. Yeah,
I know it's never how I imagine this, but it's it's honestly perfect.
I
Because now I
well,
see him floating through. Now I see him floating through space as you've designed him,
yeah.
and it,
Yeah, you can see him filling in the stars. And I think the last thing I'll kind of do is I try to like blur the edges of them a little bit. Oh, the other thing I did, I tried to keep everything on one layer. So with this app, you can do multiple layers, but to keep it very traditional and painterly, I tried to do it all on one. So there was no, well, I still use some, but I tried as hard as I could to keep most of them on one. And you'll see here, like I tried to like blur him in the edges, but you'll see that like dark bit above the helmet. I was like, oh crap, I can't do that. So I have to go back in and erase it. And honestly, I think it kind of worked because it makes him feel like the edges are a little less rigid. So it really looks like he's floating.
as I'm watching this, like I think another word that I pull out of it is almost, and maybe not in a negative context, but it's like it's helpless.
Yeah.
Because if you're just adrift, if you're just floating, you're really kind of just letting the world take you wherever it is. Whether you're in a sea or whether you're in space, you really don't have control over where you're at. So it really is kind of a helpless feeling, even if you're not necessarily in danger. You are very much you are very much at the mercy of what is around you.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it. So now you should see it's kind of paused and went full screen. This is the final product. What are your thoughts? How'd I do?
Well, I mean, I never have to doubt that your artwork will be fantastic, regardless of what song is ever picked. But
Oh, thank you.
I think this is completely different from what I would have imagined, just in scale of, well, like we discussed, you did space. I thought of a sea, but I also love the ode to the band name. Whether you meant to do that or not, I love
I
the
don't
ode
think
to
I
the
did.
band name because of all things that I love about this band, I love the band name. Their music is fine. I really like this instrumental, but the ode to Fires in the Distance is whether, like I said, whether you meant to do it or not, you nailed
Uh,
it.
yeah, I full disclosure, I did not mean to do that, but that's just a happy accident.
Perfect. We'll
Wow.
call it that, but it really is, that kind of helpless feeling that we talked about, but it doesn't mean that you're necessarily in trouble. I mean, if you're floating through space and see that, maybe you're not coming up on it. It's just what you see. But the floating feeling of just wandering around is very prominent, but the the fire is fantastic.
All right. So top marks. I appreciate that. I'm gonna make a playlist of all of our songs that you guys can find on Spotify, and I'll see if Ryan here can hook us up with one on Apple Music. This has been an installation of Ink and Iron. Thank you for watching.
And your favorite lyric from Fires in the Distance, the peace I've earned can never be yours.